Her key didn't fit the door anymore. I know because I watched her twist it once, twice, aggressively, then take a step back in confusion. I saw it through the peephole, standing in complete silence, my hand still shaking from what I'd just done 10 minutes earlier. She hadn't seen the message yet. She thought she was walking back into our apartment. Her world. She thought she was still my wife. 38 minutes ago, she sent me a text that simply read, "I'm not your property. I'll be late. Don't call." I hadn't called. Not once. Not that week, not that night. But I guess guilt echoes like a ringtone in some people's heads. So I replied, "I'm not your husband anymore. Don't come back." And then I got to work. I locked the deadbolt. I changed the passcode on the smart lock. I disconnected her car from our garage app. I moved her shoes into a box and left them by the hallway window, just out of reach, like her honesty. And now here she was, still dressed like she came from somewhere too expensive for me to afford. Her hair tousled in that careless, careful way. Her eyes darting to her phone. It buzzed. I'd finally sent the follow-up message. "You can collect your things with an officer present. I'm done." That's when it happened. Her face collapsed in real time. 1 second, she was stone. The next, glass. The buzzing started 5 minutes later. Call after call after call. 50 in total. She didn't knock. She didn't scream. Not yet. But I knew this was only the beginning. Because the lie she told tonight wasn't her first. And it sure wasn't going to be her last. I didn't answer the door when she finally knocked. It was soft at first, like she didn't want to wake a neighbor. Or maybe she wasn't sure if she had the right to knock anymore. The uncertainty in her silence was louder than any apology she could have offered. I stayed seated on the carpet, back against the bookshelf, staring at the screen of the device I hadn't touched in months, her old iPad. She'd left it logged in. I'm sure she thought I'd never notice. I hadn't. Not until tonight. I'd stumbled across it by accident while boxing up her things. Tucked between 2 sweaters in the closet she hadn't opened in weeks. No case. No password prompt. Just a blinking screen with dozens of unread messages. Because apparently, Colby from finance doesn't believe in boundaries. Or maybe boundaries are just for husbands who still think they matter. I never meant to snoop. I was never that guy. Never needed to be. I believed her. I gave her space. I trusted she meant it when she said, "I just need to work late." Or, "He's harmless. It's just drinks with the team." But tonight, something inside me said, look. Not out of revenge. Not even out of anger. Just out of exhaustion. I needed answers, and for once, she wasn't going to control how I got them. And there it was. A photo. Sent 2 nights ago. Not graphic. Not explicit. But somehow worse. It was them in a dimly lit bar. Her hair tied back. Glass in hand. That smile. The real one. The one I hadn't seen in almost a year. She was leaning into him like he was gravity, and she was tired of floating. And his hand, it was on her lower back. Not possessive, not inappropriate. Just familiar. Like someone who'd done it 100 times and no longer needed permission. There was a caption. Told you he still doesn't suspect a thing, face with tears of joy. That did it. That was the nail in the coffin I didn't even know I'd built. Outside, the knocking grew louder, angrier now. I heard her voice finally, muffled through the wood, strained and sharp. "Clark? Clark, what the hell is going on? Open the door." I stayed silent. Instead, I opened the next message thread. This one was with someone named Lila Nail Polish. Her coworker. The one I always suspected had a little too much to say about our marriage. I tapped through the messages, my stomach tightening with every scroll. He's getting clingy again. Ugh. Honestly, just move in with Colby already. LOL, I will. Just need Clark to finally snap, so I don't look like the bad guy, face with tears of joy. And then the one that really made me feel sick. The only thing he's good for is paying off my car. Once that's done, I'm out. She hadn't said it to me. She didn't need to. She'd already made the decision. I was just the last one to find out. I stood up, turned off the iPad, and slid it into the bag of her things. Not to be cruel. Not to use as evidence. Just as a mirror. Let her see herself through the words she never thought I'd read. Another knock. Then a voice, louder now, breaking slightly. "Clark, I don't know what you think you saw, but you need to open this door right now." I walked to the front, took a deep breath, and without saying a word, slid her box of belongings just outside the door. Then I locked it again. That's when the screaming started. Not rage. Not fury. Desperation. Because she knew. She didn't just lose a husband. She lost control of the narrative. And that was the one thing she never thought she'd have to surrender. By the time her 58th call came in, I was sitting on the kitchen floor, cross-legged, staring at the crooked magnet on the fridge door that read, "Good things take time." She bought that magnet in Charleston during our 3rd year of marriage, after one of our worst fights. A fight that ended with her crying in my arms on the hotel balcony, swearing we'd never go to sleep angry again. That was 5 apologies and 4 betrayals ago. I muted the phone. I wasn't angry anymore. I was something worse, clear. You don't get clarity through yelling or throwing plates. You get it when the fantasy finally dies, and you look at what's left, and it no longer begs to be rescued. That's when I remembered Owen. Not my friend. Hers. Owen was her boss 2 years ago. Divorced, intense, with this weird obsession with minimalist watches and Vietnamese coffee. He was always polite, always smiling, but the kind of smile that meant he was hiding 1,000 opinions about you. I didn't like him. Jessa said I was being paranoid. But Owen liked me. That's what made it easy. When Jessa got promoted and moved departments, she cut contact with him. Too much of a micromanager, she said. Controlling. Toxic. But that didn't explain why he still followed her on Instagram. The burner Instagram she didn't think I knew about. Or why he sent her a happy birthday message this year that said, "Hope he's treating you better than I would've." I still had his number. And when I called, he answered on the 2nd ring. Confused, cautious. "Clark," he said. "Hey, wow, it's been a while." I didn't waste time. "Just tell me if they ever stopped seeing each other." There was a pause. A long one. I imagined him pacing in some loft apartment, trying to decide how much damage honesty was worth. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and tired. "I'm not part of it anymore," he said. "Haven't been for almost a year." But there was something. Another pause. "You already know the answer." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Then he added something that made my stomach drop. "Just check the name Brett in her recent photos. That's not her cousin. And he's not new." I ended the call without another word. For the first time that night, I started shaking. Not from betrayal. From embarrassment. Because I realized this had been going on far longer than I let myself believe. Maybe even before Owen. Maybe I'd been the placeholder in my own marriage. The stand-in until someone more exciting, more flexible, more invisible came along. I opened her Instagram. The burner one. Scrolled through to the last photo she posted. Her at some rooftop event. A man in the corner, blurry, cropped, but familiar. Tall, clean-shaven, designer watch, leaning just a little too close. The caption read, "Feeling free sparkles." She posted that on our anniversary. I laughed, out loud. One of those empty laughs that feels more like a cough. Then I grabbed the burner phone she thought I didn't use anymore and took a picture of her box of stuff, her ring, and the message thread with Colby from finance. I posted it to my story. No caption. Didn't need one. 10 minutes later, she stopped knocking. Instead, I got a text. Not an insult. Not a denial. Just one sentence. "Please, can I come inside and explain?" I stared at it. The phone buzzed again. "It's not what you think." Then, "He doesn't mean anything." Then, "It was supposed to be over." That was the worst one. Because now I knew it had once begun. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even sit down for more than 10 minutes. My legs were tired, but my brain wouldn't stop sprinting. It was like adrenaline had replaced my blood, not from rage, but from focus. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't confused. I wasn't guessing. I knew what had happened. I had proof. And for once, I had the upper hand. I didn't want revenge, not in the movie sense. No smashing windows or posting screenshots to shame her. That wasn't me. But I did want clarity. I wanted her to look me in the eye and tell me what I already knew. Not to confess. Not to cry. Just to admit that she played me. So I could stop blaming myself for being too boring, too forgiving, too predictable. That's when I remembered her mother. Carolyn. We hadn't spoken in nearly 6 months. Not because of a falling out, just the slow drift of distance. She and I were close once, closer than Jessa was comfortable with. Maybe because Carolyn saw through things. She always said, "A woman who builds walls around herself usually has someone she's hiding inside with." At 7:14 a.m., I sent her a text. "Do you have time to talk about Jessa?" She called within 60 seconds. I told her everything. The text messages, the knock at the door, the iPad, the mystery man in the photos. She wasn't shocked. That was the first sign. "I had a feeling," she said. "When she stopped letting me visit, I knew something was off." She's been performative lately, always talking about how free she feels. That's usually code for guilty. Then she paused. Clark, do you want her back? It hit me like a punch in the ribs. The answer should have been easy, but I hesitated. And in that hesitation, I realized just how broken I was. I didn't know what I wanted. Closure? Redemption? An apology so grand it rewrote the past? I don't know, I said, but I want her to tell the truth. For once. Carolyn took a deep breath. Then I think I can help. The plan was simple, brutal in its honesty. Jessa wouldn't come clean to me, not fully, but she might to her mother. And if I was there, just outside the room. Carolyn invited her over that evening, under the guise of helping her pack up some childhood things she left in the attic. She bit immediately. Guilt makes people obedient, especially when they think they still have control. While they talked in the living room, I sat in the guest room upstairs, phone in hand, voice recorder on. Not hiding, just waiting. It didn't take long. Carolyn opened with, "What's going on between you and Clark?" And then came the flood. "He's just always there, you know," Jessa said. "Always waiting. Always trying." It made me feel trapped. Trapped, her mom asked. By what kindness? No. Just, he never pushed back. Never fought. I needed friction. Colby gave me that. He's chaotic and stupid, and I hate that I like that. Carolyn didn't interrupt. She let her daughter keep digging. I thought Clark would blow up. That he'd scream or cheat back or, I don't know, do something to make me feel like I wasn't the bad guy. And then she said it. But he didn't. He just stopped loving me out loud. And that silence, it made me realize I lost. I leaned forward, barely breathing. She continued, her voice trembling now. I thought if I kept pushing, he'd finally walk away. But he didn't. Not until last night. And now that he has, I don't even know who I am without him. I didn't hear the rest. Because my hands were shaking too hard to hold the phone steady. Not from vindication. From grief. Real, raw, delayed grief. The kind that doesn't cry. It just empties you. That night, I didn't call her. I didn't text. I just waited. Because tomorrow, I'd show her exactly who I was without her. And she wouldn't like the answer. The thing about taking your power back is that it never looks the way movies make it out to be. There's no epic confrontation in the rain, no slamming doors, no broken glass on the floor while sad music plays. Sometimes, it looks like breakfast. Specifically, 2 eggs, overcooked toast, and a single, calm email. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. No texts, no voicemails. She'd finally gone quiet, which was more alarming than the chaos. When someone like Jessa goes silent, it usually means they're building something, or someone is building it for them. I knew she wouldn't accept this quietly. She'd rewrite the story in her favor. She was probably already rehearsing the victim monologue for her friends, her therapist, maybe even for court if it came to that. So I decided to write my own version, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I opened my laptop and started drafting a letter. Not to her. To everyone who mattered in the shared parts of our life. Her family, our mutual friends, even my own parents, who always looked at her like she was the daughter they never had. I kept it honest. No screenshots. No dramatics. Just the truth, laid out like a timeline. I wrote, I loved Jessa deeply. I probably still do. But she didn't love me in return, not in the way that builds a life. I tolerated things I shouldn't have, dismissed red flags I didn't want to believe, and convinced myself that patience would fix distance. It didn't. It just made me quieter. And in that silence, she mistook my loyalty for weakness. I didn't name names. I didn't mention Colby, or Owen, or Brett. I wasn't trying to expose her. I was trying to set the record straight before she turned it into a performance. I hit send. And that was it. No takebacks. No, maybe that was too much. Just a long exhale, and the kind of clarity that makes your chest ache from being too still. A few hours later, my phone lit up. Not with her name. With his. Colby. I almost laughed. The audacity. I hadn't even spoken to the guy, hadn't acknowledged his existence. But apparently, silence wasn't enough. I let it ring. Then I let it ring again. On the 3rd attempt, I answered. Clark, he said, voice smooth like a salesman who hadn't closed the deal yet. Hey man. Look, I just wanted to reach out and... I stopped him. You don't get to do this, I said. Calm. Too calm. You don't get to cheat with someone's wife and then call him like you're a concerned coworker. There was a pause. Then a shift in tone. I'm not trying to start drama. I I think you misunderstood a lot of what happened. Jessa was really confused, and you're explaining yourself to the wrong guy, I said. Save it for her next husband. Then I hung up. That moment was when I knew I'd crossed a line, not into pettiness, but into indifference. And that's a line you can't uncross. I didn't care what he thought of me. I didn't care how she'd spin it. I just cared about finally being free of this need to keep protecting her image at the cost of my own reality. By sunset, she texted again. Did you talk to Colby? I didn't ask him to reach out. Please believe me. It was almost funny. The desperation in that message. Not because she was sorry, but because she felt the floor shifting under her. Then came the one that really told the truth. What did you tell my mother? I didn't reply. Instead, I packed her last box, the one I'd left untouched until now. It held her wedding dress, still dry cleaned, still sealed in plastic. She hadn't looked at it in years, but she insisted on keeping it in the front of our closet, like some relic of the role she played so well. I placed it in the trunk of my car. Because tomorrow, I was driving to her office, and I was going to return it, not in anger, not in spectacle, but in full view of the life she chose over us. I didn't plan on walking into the office, that much I swear. The original idea was simple. Park the car, leave the box at the front desk, text her that her past was waiting downstairs, and walk away without ever looking back. Clean, silent, final. But as it turns out, you can rehearse dignity all you want, until pride grabs the wheel and steers straight into chaos. The moment I stepped through the glass doors of that downtown building, I knew I shouldn't be there. Everything about it screamed her world. Polished tile floors, fake modern art, people pretending their lives weren't held together by caffeine and lies. I hated how familiar it all felt. I'd picked her up from here a dozen times. Back when she'd still smile when she saw me. Back when I believed I had a place in that orbit. The receptionist glanced up from her computer, about to ask me to sign in, but then her eyes dropped to the box in my arms, and something about it made her mouth shut without a word. Maybe she recognized the name on the tag. Or maybe she'd seen one too many workplace meltdowns and knew better than to get in the middle. Just here to drop something off? I said quietly. I didn't expect the voice behind me. Clark. I turned. He was shorter than I imagined. That was the first thing I noticed. Not that it mattered. I didn't come for a comparison. But it struck me anyway, how small he looked in that moment, like a child who knew he was about to be scolded. Colby. The man she risked everything for. The man who thought he was stepping into something built for him. He cleared his throat and glanced down at the box in my hands. I think we should talk, he said. His voice was flatter this time, no longer coated in that smug tone from our last conversation. Somewhere private. Just for a minute. I should have walked away. I had the high ground. I had my closure. But something in me, something older than logic, wanted to see what kind of man you had to be to take someone else's wife and still look him in the eye. So I followed him. We ended up in a small break room. Bright fluorescent lights, stale coffee smell, a half-eaten donut on the counter. It wasn't the kind of place you'd imagine life-changing truths to be spoken, but there we were, two strangers connected by a woman who told both of us different versions of the same story. Colby leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I didn't know she was still sleeping with you, he said quickly, like ripping off a Band-Aid. I raised an eyebrow. She wasn't. He blinked. Oh, that single word told me everything. He thought he was the victim. Thought he was the one being played. She made it sound like you were just roommates, he continued. She said you hadn't touched each other in months. That it was basically over and you just hadn't signed papers yet. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because that's exactly what she had made it. A technicality. A delay in paperwork. She'd managed to strip 6 years of love, loss, and sacrifice down to an administrative delay. She was lying, I said flatly. I was still buying groceries for her. Still warming up her car on cold mornings. Still hoping she'd come back to the version of herself I married. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he looked at the box. What's in there? He asked. Her wedding dress, I replied. He looked stunned, like I'd pulled out a loaded weapon. I stepped toward him and lowered my voice. She told you we were over, but she kept this. In the front of the closet. Still dry cleaned. Still sealed. You know what that means? He shook his head. It means she wasn't done. Not until I said so. I walked past him without another word, left the box on the front desk, and exited the building without looking back. But my chest was burning. Not with anger. With something deeper, like betrayal wrapped in clarity. As I reached the parking garage, my phone buzzed. A message from her. Did you come here? Colby just told me you brought the dress. What are you doing? I didn't answer. Because for the first time, I wasn't doing what she expected. I was undoing the script, line by line, until there was nothing left of the part one used to play. I didn't expect to hear from her again that quickly, and I definitely didn't expect what she sent. It wasn't another desperate message, or an apology dressed in emotional manipulation. It was an invitation, hand-delivered, actual paper, gold-trimmed, folded into an envelope that smelled like her old perfume, the kind she used to wear when she wanted to feel like someone else. She had invited me to dinner, not a restaurant, our house, our dining room, Friday, 7 p.m., just to talk, the note said, in her handwriting. No drama, just two people who once promised to understand each other. I stared at it for a long time, like it might burst into flames if I read it too many times. It was classic Jessa, polished, graceful, strategic. She wasn't giving up. This wasn't surrender. This was the performance. The final act. She didn't want closure. She wanted the illusion of reconciliation. Something she could reference later to prove she tried. Something she could use if I went public. If I became inconvenient. I thought about ignoring it. But then I thought, no, let her try. Let her see what it feels like when the man she once controlled finally shows up with nothing left to protect. So I arrived. Not in a suit. Not in a storm. Just in a hoodie and jeans, like I was there to pick up a package someone else signed for. She opened the door in that navy blue dress she used to wear on our anniversaries. The one with the tiny clasp in the back she could never quite reach without asking me for help. Her hair was done. Her eyes looked tired. But she smiled like everything was fine. Thanks for coming, she said softly. I stepped inside. Everything looked the same, which somehow made it worse. The table was set like we were still pretending. Candles. Cloth napkins. Her wine glass, already filled. I watched her eyes search my face for some sign of softness, of surrender. She found none. We sat. She served food, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. All my favorites. She remembered. Or maybe she'd just read back through old texts where I told her, long ago, what comfort tasted like. She didn't eat. She just looked at me. I wanted to explain, she began. You already did, I replied. I know you're hurt. No, I said. I was hurt. Now I'm awake. She went quiet, then reached into her purse beside the table and pulled out something I didn't expect, her wedding ring. She placed it gently on the napkin in front of me. I kept it, she whispered. I didn't wear it because I felt unworthy of it. But I never threw it away. I don't want to lose everything we had. Not like this. I stared at the ring. It used to mean something. Now it looked like bait. This isn't about us anymore, Jessa, I said calmly. This is about what you thought you could get away with. About how long you believed I would stay blind just to avoid seeing the worst in you. Her voice cracked. Clark, I made mistakes. Mistakes are accidental, I said. You made plans. She blinked, recoiling just slightly, like I'd said something she didn't expect me to say out loud. She was waiting for the version of me who would cry, who would tell her I still loved her, who would beg to fix what she broke. But he didn't show up. Because that man doesn't live here anymore. Then I stood. And I handed her something. Not a letter, not a threat. A flash drive. What's this? She asked. Everything I didn't say, I replied. On that drive was a simple audio file. The recording of her conversation with her mother. The one where she admitted she wanted me to be the villain. Where she confessed to using me as a placeholder. Where she laughed about how easy it would be to make me look unstable if she ever needed to. I didn't give it to her to threaten her. I gave it to her to show her I wasn't playing the part anymore. I walked out without touching the food, without looking back. And as I closed the door behind me, I heard the sound of her finally breaking, not from guilt, but from losing the last person who saw her and still chose to stay. 6 months passed. Not quickly, not in a blur. They passed like slow-moving freight trains, dragging behind them the weight of 1,000 unsent messages and a silence that was louder than anything I'd ever known. But I never once reached out. I didn't check her social media. I didn't ask about her through mutual friends. And I didn't answer the 2 emails she sent. One in January, one just after Valentine's Day, both with subject lines that read like unfinished sentences. She didn't deserve my hatred. Not anymore. That had faded. What replaced it wasn't forgiveness. Not quite. It was something simpler. Something I never thought I'd find again. Peace. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, nothing special, but quiet. Clean. Mine. I painted the walls myself, badly, but they made me smile every time I saw the streaks I'd missed. I started cooking again, not to impress anyone, just to enjoy the ritual. I took long walks after work. I slept without dreaming about her face twisted in regret. And most importantly, I started writing again, short stories, letters to no one, scraps of dialogue I'd been too numb to let out while I was still trying to be who she needed me to be. Then, one Sunday afternoon in April, I ran into her. Of all places, it was the hardware store. A place I'd gone for screws and sandpaper and duct tape, a symbol of rebuilding. I didn't see her at first. I heard her voice behind me, laughing. I turned. She stopped mid-laugh. We both stood there, frozen in that weird dance people do when the past collides with the present too fast for the heart to catch up. She looked thinner, paler, older in a way that wasn't about age. I felt nothing. No rage. No ache. Just quiet. She took a step forward. Clark. I smiled politely, just enough to acknowledge the echo of who we were. I heard you're doing well, she said, softly. I am, I replied, and it was the most honest thing I'd said in years. She opened her mouth again, then closed it. I could tell she was searching, not for words, but for an angle, for any opening I might give her. But I didn't give her one. I'm seeing someone, I added gently. Her name's Elise. She teaches music at the community center. Jessa's smile cracked, just slightly, not because she was jealous, but because she realized she was now a character in someone else's story, not the author of mine anymore. That's great, she said, eyes glassy. Really? I nodded. Take care of yourself, Jessa. Then I walked away, not to punish her, not to prove anything, but because for the first time, I didn't need closure. I was the closure. She didn't lose me to Elise. She didn't lose me to anger or bitterness or revenge. She lost me to a version of myself that she thought would never wake up. But he did. And now, I live for him.